Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Thank the Show Me Institute under leadership of Mr. Sinfield for giving us the opportunity to share with you this morning. I'm going to take about 10 to 12 minutes to kind of walk through a presentation about the district and then kind of talk about some things that I think are the things that I think the conversation will kind of focus and be about. Really quick, I think what has already been talked about, the district's size and the number of schools and attendance rate. Number of graduates that graduated last school year, some 1873. You can see an incline in the number of students who graduated over the last 4 or 5 years, and the percentage as well. Number of colleges that students have been accepted in awards. Communication arts, speaking a little bit about the academic pieces, showing that the academic achievement for students in grades 3 through 8 has increased every single year. You had this PowerPoint, so I won't spend a lot of time kind of talking through it. Same thing in mathematics, indicating that a comparison of 2011 MAP results for the past year shows that 24 elementary schools and middle schools improved, 11 elementary middle schools improved in both Common Arts and Math, and 2 elementary middle schools improved in both Common Arts and Math for the past 3 years. Comparison of 2011 data indicates that every grade group, meaning kids in 3rd grade in 2010 moving to 4th grade in 2011, increased. So that means students, the core group of students who are in 3rd grade, 4th improved, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 7th, 8th, and so on. And in addition to that, it shows with the exception of 6th grade, from last year's data, 2010 to 2011, 3rd grade to 3rd grade, 4th grade to 4th grade showed improvement as well. Since 2007, there's been an increase in student achievement, advanced or proficient in math, tests, and communication arts and math. No other elementary, secondary, public education institution in the city of St. Louis matches the increase over that same period of time. Looking at the 10th grade English 2 assessments, 47 in 09, 48 in 2010, and 61% in 2010. Same kind of increase in algebra, which is a 9th grade subject, 23.1, 27.4, and 42.4 over the last 3 years. End of course assessment showing that 10 or 15 high schools showed improvement over the last year. EOC, that's end of course assessment, 10 high schools showed improvement over the last year in Common Arts, 14 high schools showed improvement over the last year on math, EOC. Number of schools that made AYP, which is a No Child Left Behind requirement for the federal government. In addition to that, the number of schools made AYP in communication arts and mathematics exclusively, that number is shown as well. The fact of the matter is that the district is still unaccredited, and obviously accreditation takes 6, provisional accreditation takes 6 points. The district is appealing 1 point right now, not really hopeful that that's going to occur, quite frankly, after looking at some data and looking at our first round of getting results back. But because the district does not have a point in the academic area, it's still unaccredited at this point in time. As you know, Deseg makes the final decision in terms of accreditation. Just some new initiatives: African-centered curriculum school, gender-specific schools that we've created over the last 2 years. All those schools showing an increase in the number of students that are attending those schools this year compared to last year. So some choices that parents are having, indicating that those choices are getting more students into the seats. Early child education, the district has invested some $5 million in the expansion of early childhood programs, 34 additional pre-K classrooms, some 2,300 kids compared to about 1,500 last school year, because we really believe that early child education is really a key indicator for moving students forward, especially in students with a high percentage of poverty. The free and reduced lunch rate for the district is about 89%. Won't talk about this. This is just some information relative to the pupil-teacher ratio, local agreement with the union that was put in place in St. Louis plan. Revenues, really glad that we have reached a point that we are not deficit spending, meaning that we're spending within our means. Projected was about $3 million in surplus. We really came in at about 1.4, and the plan is next year to stay within the budget as well. You've heard about the Deseg funding. The Deseg funding spending will be taking place in the following areas. First of all, eliminating about $55 million in debt. $35 million was a loan that the district took out years and years ago and never paid any money on that loan. That loan was taken out to build a couple of schools, or to assist in terms of building some schools. Another $19 million was given to the district to cover the actual deficit, if you will, that existed, and the other dollars, as you can see, are being spent in those areas over the next 3 to 4 years. So real challenges. One of the challenges that we face on a regular basis are challenges around the state of Missouri does not have a mandatory 5-year attendance for school. Kids in the state of Missouri don't have to go to school until they're 7 years old. That is incredibly difficult for a district like St. Louis because if students don't go to school early, they don't get the kind of foundation that they need to have. And so as we work to try to change some of the legislation, the laws, if you will, especially in a district that's unaccredited, it should almost be a requirement that early childhood education is a requirement if we're going to build the kind of foundation that needs to be in place. Some other kinds of things in the city of St. Louis, the teacher dismissal procedures are such that it takes 100 days to remove a teacher after you give a teacher a plan. In every other city or county in the state of Missouri, it takes 30 days. So if there's a bad teacher in the classroom, I have to work with that teacher for 100 days with a detailed plan called a PIP, Professional Improvement Plan, to remove that teacher. And that's not even counting the hearing process. I'm just talking about getting them out of the classroom. No other place has that in the state of Missouri but St. Louis. Public school accountability. And I think the real issue for me around the issue of accountability is just being on an even playing field in every sense of the word. I'll give you some data real quick just to kind of end my conversation and turn it over to Michael. We talk about unaccredited districts, but in my view, we have schools that are unaccredited, meaning that schools that have high concentrations of poverty and affect what happens in the district. In the city of St. Louis, there's some 25,000 kids. If I would remove 4 high schools, the 4 comprehensive high schools, which really educate about 2,000 kids totally, the district would be accredited. If I would take those 4 schools out of the numbers, the district would have provisional accreditation with about 9 points, 9 out of 14 points. If I use only magnet schools and look at our 25 magnet schools, our school district would be fully accredited. Fully accredited, and we will be competing with every other district in the state of Missouri. That's what the data says. That's not what Dr. Adams says. That's what the data specifically says. And so as we talk about improving school districts, we need to look specifically at individual schools and how we make a decision around supporting individual schools, not just the district as a whole. The concentration is to work with schools that have high levels of poverty, concentrated poverty. And I'm talking about schools that are in neighborhoods where the entire neighborhood is a high concentration of poverty, and working with that particular school to increase the kind of achievement that needs to take place. And our magnet schools compete with almost anybody, no ifs and buts about it. And those schools that have high levels of poverty, it's very difficult to move the needle because it's much more than what the teacher does with that student every single day. Thank you. And I think I have one more, which is really the number of students who graduate.
Josh, can we get my Snapshot? Well, while we're waiting to get the next PowerPoint here.
Any more?
There's some movers and shakers in this room. So I want to tell you that those of you who are in positions of authority, I want to thank Dr. Adams for coming. I have the opportunity to interact with superintendents and so on around the country, and you know, you guys who are in position of authority, you got to keep this man on the job. He's really good, and we're lucky to have him. And I'm glad you came here today. Not everyone would show up at a free market think tank. I'm not sure. I don't see a lot of superintendents showing up at our events. I'm not sure why, but it just hasn't been happening. I guess they just aren't aware. Okay, so I'm going to talk more about Missouri. Brenda asked me to say a few things to get the juices flowing. And so this is going to be a mile wide. It's not even an inch deep. It'll be like a millimeter deep, but just to kind of provoke things and get some discussion going. And I'm just going to talk about a few areas here where kind kind of as an academic sitting in, we don't have ivory towers in Columbia, sitting in my brick tower, you know, sort of looking at the national scene and how Missouri fits in. Of course, we have to talk about school choice. We have Senator Cunningham here and people from the Children's Education Alliance of Missouri who will be able to talk to you in detail about the Turner decision, which is dominating a lot of our discussion. We're in a peculiar situation in Missouri. We have a peculiar charter school law that allows charters only in 2 districts of 522, so we're very much an odd duck there. Choice is very limited in other districts. We also labor under the Blaine Amendment. We are a Blaine Amendment state, and again, looking at this situation, we have in front of us a remedy called Catholic schools that have decades of sophisticated research showing that...
What's the Blaine Amendment?
I'm sorry. The Blaine Amendment is a senator from Maine who tried to get an amendment to the U.S. Constitution to prevent public dollars flowing to what he called sectarian schools, which meant religious schools. And he failed to get an amendment to the U.S. Constitution, so they pushed it at the states, and I think 27 states, something like that, have amendments, have much stronger language in their state constitutions preventing tax dollars from flowing to sectarian schools, which is religious schools. So we have such an amendment, so it would make it very difficult to have vouchers. There may be ways to work around it, but it's very much a restriction on choice. And again, the example I like to give is, imagine we had a Blaine Amendment in medicine, and that you couldn't go to a hospital that had a cross in the emergency room. Let's see, we would knock out St. Anthony's, Barnes Jewish, walk down the list in St. Louis, and think about what medical care would be like in the state of Missouri if we prevented public dollars from flowing to private religiously oriented hospitals or medical institutions. So we're operating under a severe constraint. We've taken an important solution off the table. We ought to put it back on. And now on the charter school front, so what we've done is we've forced choice through this route of charter schools. We can talk more about this. Our charter school law it's uncapped, but the role of the sponsors has been problematic in Missouri. I'm going to quickly, we've estimated what's called a value-added econometric model for the whole state. So every dot here, there's 1,250 dots, which is every school that tests kids between 3 and 8 on the map. And these are the charter schools. The green dots mean these charter schools, this is St. Louis and Kansas City, are significantly above the state average. The blue dots, the charter schools, there's no difference between the state average in terms of student achievement growth. And the red dots are significantly below the state average. The only point I want you to see here, other than I chose Christmas colors, is that, seasonal colors, is that we have some charter schools that are significantly above high performers, above the state average, and we have a number that are low performers. So the renewal process for charter schools, what we want to be doing is getting rid of these guys in favor of those guys. That's a key part of the charter experiment, and it's not happening. That's comm arts, here's math, a very similar story. And by the way, if you have a red dot on one, you tend to have a red dot on the other as well. So, teacher collective bargaining. If there are 1,000 reasons you should be writing out your check to the Show Me Institute generously, but this is one of them.
Can I ask a question on the last bit? It's pretty evenly distributed, but we have no idea how that was made up. I mean, are the charter schools in a certain area bad because the area was bad before and it's bad after?
No.
Why is that? What's the explanation?
We've taken out student poverty, race, student mobility. We've controlled for as much as we can of the community, if you will, characteristics.
So it's management?
It's hard to say, but the bottom line is that they're underperforming. leveling the playing field in that regard.
So our takeaway from this room is that charter school, I mean, I've only heard charter schools are fabulous and it's the solution and all
some
that.
are fabulous and some are not fabulous, and that the point of the experiment is to phase out the ones that aren't so good, and that's the power you have with the charters. Yeah.
Question just seems to me to be so basic. The charter school nationally that's been so successful, and I understand is doing great things here, is the KIP program. Why can't you use the KIP model, where that means more intense learning in the other charter schools? And that's what I don't understand. Okay,
the way charter schools work is, and correct me if I'm oversimplifying, is basically entrepreneurs go to a sponsor, and the sponsor is a higher ed institution that runs a program in St. Louis or Kansas City, basically a teacher training program. So that would be, you know, UMSL and public universities, Missouri Baptist, and so on. It's those sponsors who decide which charters to accept and sponsor.
Right.
So Washington U sponsors the KIP Academy here in St. Louis. And who sponsors the KIP in, there's one in Kansas City, and I don't know who sponsors that. But it's their choice. So they could say, here's the bar, we're not going to sponsor anyone, but these high-quality charters with a good track record. That's not what they've been doing.
Mike, if we can get through you, and
yeah,
then we'll
sure.
open up, we'll have a lot of Q&A.
Okay, so teacher collective bargaining. I used to use a metaphor that we may go off a cliff here, but it's actually the wrong metaphor. We're sort of like the frog sitting in a pot of water. You know, if you've got the boiling water, you put the frog in and they jump out. In fact, we're in a situation where we, the taxpayers and parents, are the frog sitting in the pot that's getting hotter and hotter. Now, the simple fact of the matter is the NEA and the EFT are trying to get through litigation what they failed to get through the legislature. There was a major court decision, Supreme Court decision, 3 years ago saying teachers have a right to collective bargaining, but it did not say what that means. The NEA and AFT are trying to get through a variety of court cases and through actually bullying school districts to get exclusive representation, bargaining in good faith, and ultimately what they want to get is agency fees, mandatory dues. Now, there's a variety of cases working through the court system that you aren't reading about in the Post-Dispatch that our Show Me folks are going to start tracking. And we're going to track the collective bargaining agreements. But this is all going on right now. And so we're in a very interesting situation here. We can talk about it more. We think this is very important to track this. We have a case sitting before that was argued before the Supreme Court, the Ledbetter case, that is about good faith bargaining. And we could have an outcome from that that says, you know, you're going to have to bargain in good faith and with the union, and then that of course means then the courts will be involved in saying, well, what does good faith mean? Teach for America, Scott Bayer's here. So I mean, I had downer news here in the first two. The one great nice thing about Missouri is Teach for America has a solid foothold. We have several hundred alums, young people. Some of the smartest young people in the country are drawn into this program, and they're now relocating to St. Louis and Kansas City. Even after they teach in our schools, they stay here, and it's a talent pool. It adds to our gene pool, okay? So it's great. Research backs up their effectiveness, and we can talk about that. One bit of good news is we do have, now this is self-serving, we can now drill down and look at the effectiveness of schools and ultimately teachers by looking at student achievement growth. This is my Christmas tree chart or seasonal chart. The green are significantly above the state average, the red are significantly below state average in terms of student achievement growth. This is poverty, student poverty. So we have high poverty schools that are very effective. We have high poverty schools that are very ineffective. And they're out there. And we can now identify them. Why? Is it management? Is it curriculum? Is it collective bargaining? I don't know, but at least we can now have data that can begin to pinpoint effectiveness, and that's an important first step. That's math. Finally, market-based pay reform. Missouri is behind on this one. Many other states Okay, here's how almost all the teachers in Missouri are paid. This is Columbia, Missouri. If you have a pulse and live another year, you move down the columns. It's experience. If you accumulate graduate credits that may have nothing to do with what you teach, your pay goes up. Almost all of your pay is driven in 521 school districts in Missouri by this chart. If you're a first grade teacher, you're marching according to the same schedule as a high school science and math teacher. This makes no economic sense, okay? We know that there are differences across teaching fields. We know there's differences across schools within a district in terms of attractiveness. And most importantly, we know from the kind of value-added research I showed you before that there's a tremendous difference in the effectiveness of teachers even within the same school building. And we take no recognition of this here. What we've been doing, and I'll end it here, this is a chart, a busy chart, but I love it. I jokingly say it doesn't matter what I'm asked to talk about, I always put this chart up. This is an index starting at 100. The upper graph is payrolls of non-teachers and teachers. This goes out to the most recent data available. Student enrollment, adults on the payroll. Notice the difference. So you over and over people, teacher quality is a fundamental variable in terms of student effectiveness. We've gone for a quantity over quality strategy. The payrolls of public schools have grown far faster, twice as fast as enrollment. As a result, the student-teacher ratio has dropped dramatically. The simple fact here is that if the pay at the beginning of the period, over this period, spending per student has grown in real terms by about 2.5% per year. If we had put that money into increasing teacher pay, the average teacher pay would have, and held staffing ratios constant, the average teacher pay, rather than being $45,000 a year, would be about $80,000 a year. So we've spent, every year real spending per student has gone up 2.5%. We've spent a lot of that on just adding more and more bodies to the payroll. Now, there are trade-offs, Econ 101, and that's one of them. So let's stop it there and have a lively discussion.
Yes, let's have a lively discussion. I did promise Scott Bear from Teaching for America that he's going to make the first question or comment. So Scott, you've got the floor, and then
stand up, Scott. This guy's important.
How you guys doing? I have just like a really easy question based on that last slide. So that is just, you're talking about payroll or all school district expenditures?
Yeah. Now you talk about teachers. Quickly, give us some summary.
Really quickly, so here in St. Louis we have 190 teachers that are teaching in 60 different schools, 4 school districts, and some area charters. And in Kansas City that number is about 175. To Rick's question earlier, we have seen the dramatic difference between performance in charter schools. And as a matter of fact, just last year, we were not able to successfully work with the Imagine schools, so we pulled all of our teachers out of those schools because of lack of accountability, lack of understanding, and I guarantee you on those, the red ones, those would have been the ones very, very far at the bottom. So all charter schools are not created equal. And we've seen that unless you have a very active sponsor, given the porousness of the charter law here, accountability is not necessarily there. So I believe that for the 3,800 kids, if those 3,800 kids that are enrolled in Imagine were enrolled in the magnet schools in St. Louis Public, that Dr. Adams spoke to their success, all of a sudden, when we're talking about student achievement, that would just jump dramatically. I'm excited to be here. We are actually talking about, by 2015, hopefully getting to a point where we're bringing in 150 teachers a year here in St. Louis. And then also we currently have 325 alumni, give or take a dozen, of which a third are still teaching in the schools.
questions now. Feel free.
Why did you pull out of the Imagine school?
So there are a few reasons. First one is their inability to retain leadership. Secondly, when I did try to address any questions and concerns, I was kind of given the go talk to your mom, go talk to your dad kind of treatment. Talk to a school leader, they say, oh, that's a national concern. Talk to national, that's a local board concern. Waiting 3 weeks to get a call back. because we had some very serious issues to address on how teachers were being treated, how students were being treated, and in all honesty, like what they value versus what we are trying to accomplish.
They also, haven't they had just a management change recently? I think we have a new person running the Imagine School.
Yeah.
I don't know what that's going to mean.
Nor do I.
Can I just add something on that leadership? There's an innovative program at St. Louis U trying to get these Teach for America teachers into positions of leadership, so to get them licensed to be school leaders and principals. And thanks to the generosity of Rex and Jean, there's scholarships provided for Teach for America teachers to become principals. And that's what we want to get, that pipeline going and get them into positions of leadership down the road.
We currently have 7 TFA alums who are leading schools in St. Louis, and we have the SLU dual degree program is first year Master's in Education with Principal Certification, second year MBA, and we are going to be in our third cohort starting right now. So we've had 4 graduates from it. We'll have 4 more in the spring, and then we have 5 that started this year.
I appreciate, my name is Corey Quinn, I'm president of De La Salle Middle School down in North City, and I represent that portion of school administrators out there who are operating under the Catholic school system. And I think about talk of the Hancock Amendment in the term of, no, not the blame, Hancock in terms of an unfunded mandate.
Yeah.
And if you'll pardon my embracing of the gospel for a second, holiday colors or Christmas colors, they're all good. The gospel mandates that we take care of the poor, and I would just like to suggest to Dr. Adams that there are institutions out there who would love the opportunity to work with those 4 schools that would allow you to take those off your books, if you will. And I'd love to see somehow the resources of this community acknowledge the value of the Catholic school system and its willingness to embrace all students. And if somehow we get some momentum behind that, we have partners like Teach for America, and it's going to take public, private, Catholic, non-Catholic, Jewish. I mean, I just wish that there were a way that we could think more broadly about this. So if you had any other comments about how sectarian institutions could maintain their identity and serve the students and families that we're called to serve, we're all in.
I think from my perspective, it's going to take looking outside the box and not following the same rules and guidelines that we have in place before. So we have a conversation tomorrow, quite frankly, at 4:30 with a group that we're looking to have our first district charter school, because it gives you some flexibility outside of the teacher collective bargaining agreement, if you will, and some flexibility outside of also the state's mandates, if you will, around what needs to happen in schools. And so I think any kind of conversation that gives some flexibility, because those schools need to kind of have the wide flexibility that the other schools don't have. The other schools can follow all of the rules and regulations, but those schools need to have the flexibility to have Saturday school, to have school on Sunday, to do whatever is necessary to meet students' needs where they are.
Yes, sir.
You know, the city schools have been bad so long that it's awful easy to assume that they're always going to be that way. The remarkable changes, and my background is a school superintendent in St. Charles County and 2 of the larger and more affluent school districts. But the changes that have occurred in St. Louis in the last 4 years is nothing short of phenomenal. And we ought to understand how much improvement has occurred while we're still enormous opportunities for further improvement. The changes that have occurred are just almost unbelievable.
And on the other side of the state, it's going the other direction in Kansas City. So we take the state point of view, it's gone south in some other locations. Oh, go back here. Well, someone want to take it back there. You could call
Dr. Adams, have you been able to measure the effectiveness of Teach for America teachers versus the rest of the teacher population?
We have a preliminary study that we did last year, that gives us some indication of first and second year teachers that are non-Teach for America teachers against Teach for America teachers that are first and second year teachers. So yeah, we have some quasi-data that kind of shows that we are still aligning that data, quite frankly, to look classroom by classroom, but we have some cursory data. The challenge is they don't all teach Common Arts and mathematics, and if you use the MAP assessment as an indicator of that, then you get in some trouble. We have also a cumulative benchmark assessment, and so the whole growth model that Doc is talking about is real significant, but we do have some preliminary data right now, yes.
Actually, Dr. Adams and I are speaking about that Thursday.
Yes.
Because we actually have data from the state from 2009, 2010, and just last Thursday we got it from 10-11, so we're going to be talking about that.
Senator Cunning?
Yeah, Dr. Adams, a couple questions. Number one, your comment, I appreciate you bringing up your difficulty with regard to laying off teachers that are not effective, and let's work together and see if we can fix that for you. Secondly, with regard to the comment made of the flexibility that you would like to have with regard to using all providers, public or non-public, that are willing to put their shoulder to the plow. Can you contract now? Do you feel like you have statutory right to contract with the gentleman from De La Salle or any others to give you flexibility to take over some really difficult school situations? That's question number one. Question number two, you had talked about really wanting to get teachers that can be effective on math and science. How many American Board teachers? I know that when we passed that, Missouri has more applicants for American Board in math and science than any other state. Have you been able to avail yourself of those certifications?
No. The last question, no, not to a large extent, no.
You should explain what that is.
What, you talking about National Board?
No, American Board.
ABCTE.
Oh, ABC. Oh, we have a... presently, we have very few science and math vacancies. The economy over the last 2 or 3 years has made it easy to get math and science teachers. Plus, what we do when we focus around getting teachers for Teach for America, we require them to give us certain teachers in certain areas. And so they've been giving us math and science teachers, not social studies, not PE, but math and science. So we don't have a great need for math and science teachers right now. So we've not necessarily needed to do that. We have contracted with them and have gotten a couple of teachers, but not a great deal for the ACT or ABCT teachers that you're talking about.
Are the teachers, math and science teachers, you have content knowledge specialists? Do they have degrees in math and science?
Yes, they do.
Then you're unusual.
Yes, yeah. Well, again, because at the high school level mainly, we work with Teach for America, and we get 75 teachers from Teach for America. We're asking for 25 science teachers, 25 math teachers. So we're getting persons with high skill level, if you relate, high skill level, and then they go back and get the pedagogy over the next 2 or 3 years.
Okay, and then the one with regard to the flexibility to be able to use proven providers.
The SAB does have the ability, only the SAB, to contract. The state only allows you to contract for alternative schools, but the SAB does have the ability to contract with non-alternative school providers for schools. We found that out a couple of weeks ago, quite frankly. So we do have the flexibility to do that. The last question you asked was a question around the first one?
That was it. So
okay.
Right now you have the statutory right to contract with De La Salle to help you with those difficult schools.
We have the statutory right to contract with alternative providers. Yes, we do.
Would you be open to his offer?
We will be open to having the devil's in the details. I always tell people the devil's in the details. And so the details of what they can provide and what we need has to be matched. But the answer is yes.
Let me know if you need any help.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to talk about accreditation, and you could clear up one of my questions. When you were accredited, there was elected school board. Then you were unaccredited, and you got the special administrative board. It's possible you're going to be provisionally accredited in the next year or next month, even, possibly.
I'm going to ask every single time. I'm going to push really hard for it to happen as soon as possible.
Okay, so here's the question, though. The minute that happens, the SAB goes away. That's a question, and then the elected school board comes back, and some have said the first thing they'll do is get rid of you. So I want you to explain to this audience this whole process of accreditation, provisional, what happens to you, possibly.
Okay, so
That's a good question.
There are lawyers in the room, and the lawyers have different opinions about what can and will happen. On a cursory level, you're correct. It seems that because of the fact that the district goes back to accredited state, the elected board will come back in play. That is some opinions. Some other opinions are that that's not necessarily the case. So if you look at the law, it's kind of muddled as it relates to that, but the thinking is that accreditation triggers elected board coming back in place. As far as my role, I don't deal with governance issues. My job is to lead the district and try to get it accredited. I'm not concerned about who leads that at this point in time. My goal and role is to put the city of St. Louis schools back in accredited status.
So we still don't know whether the minute the provisional happens, whether the SAB is gone and the new one comes in, or it could wait till 2014, like Frankie and Bill Danforth committee decided.
Deseg has to weigh in on that and determine exactly what occurs, and the Attorney General's office and all of those kind of people. My role is to just try to make sure that we get accredited as soon as possible.
Can the governor make that decision?
I think it really is a Deseg decision. I think at the end of the day, I think it's a Deseg decision based on the laws that are presently in place. There are a bunch of different laws out there. As I said before, some opinions are that no, some opinions are yes.
What can I ask about, understanding the situation? To me, it's critical, I guess, to understand whether or not we're accurately measuring student outcomes as well as teacher effectiveness, and I'm just curious, either of you, your thoughts on what's happening in that area and the direction that we're going in, and is it making sense? Are we accurately measuring what's happening in the classroom? Both, there's so much conversation about teaching to the test, and are the tests accurately measuring what is happening in the classroom? I know it's kind of broad, but.
Well, I teach to my tests, and it's very test driven. And they're worrying about the test as we speak. No, I think the map's a good assessment. I think it's not psychometrically it's sound. There's no problem or minimal problems of topping out. There's this national push, and Missouri jumped on it, and it comes from Race to the Top. To go over to a new assessment, which is whether, and it's called the Common Core, and frankly, I just wish the feds would back off and let states make these decisions. I don't see that we need a new assessment. If you introduce a new assessment, you're just going to break that trend I showed you. Statistically, we're going to have a problem. They're all correlated. When we come up with this new higher super duper assessment, I guarantee you when you go back and look at the correlation between that and MAP, it'll be 0.8. And so, so I think MAP is fine. I think it's good. We put a lot of time into it. It's aligned with Missouri standards. We put in 20 years coming up with these standards, and an assessment that's aligned with the standards and working out the bugs. And now there's a new Fed mandate saying, nope, change. So I'm skeptical about
it. Should it be the defining feature of understanding teacher effectiveness as well?
Oh, well, you can use district. The important development is districts are making more and more use of curriculum-aligned assessments. And that's really an important development because it lets the boss look down and say, okay, where is learning occurring and where isn't it occurring? And you can use those to also monitor the performance of classrooms and buildings and grades and what have you. So these guys at districts, the good ones, are using using data much more intensively. So you don't have to just rely on MAP, but of course it's the only thing we have statewide. But districts are using their own or other assessments as well.
Can you give us a reference for the paper that talked about the school assessments, and from that, how much of the performance in math and other subjects is due to poverty and race?
Why don't you send me an email? This is, and I can give you a lot of citations on that. Now, question. What? Oh, my model. Yeah, okay, I can send you a citation on that too. look, the reality is the most important predictor of how a kid scores is his mommy's education. Okay? That's a fact. I mean, it's been verified over many decades of research. And so schools, you know, face an uphill battle. There's a lot of student achievement comes from the community and family. But there is a contribution from schools, and so you have to. And remember, kids are in school for a long time, so if you can chip away year by year by year, you can begin to make some headway. But there's no question that family background factors are very important. But again, I just showed you before that there are some high poverty schools that are producing much larger student achievement gains, and the scale on that axis was standard deviations, and so you're talking about more than a half a standard deviation of difference in student achievement growth in a year. So that's a lot.
And it should be noted that the state is not using that model right now. The state will be looking to that model to try to have those factors dealt with as it relates to race, poverty, and all of those kinds of things. Right now the state uses a basic standard, but it doesn't take into effect all of the kind of idiosyncrasies that he put in the model.
Provide any support for the idea that early childhood education might be an important factor?
No, because we don't start testing kids at MAP until grade 3. So you have an interesting problem with the kids is you need a test, and so there are ways to assess kids coming into kindergarten, and there's a psych research that shows that kids come in with huge differences in vocabulary and things like that, but MAP doesn't begin until grade 3, and so it's hard to do much there. This fellow here.
Let me follow up on that in a way. Thomas Friedman had an article in the New York Times recently, and it sort of tied in with the comment you made about how important parents and something as simple as whether they read to their children has a dramatic influence on how the child does. Is there anything the schools are doing? Is there anything the schools can do to, before the schools even get these children at ages 5, 6, 7?
Why don't you take that one?
There's a PAT program that we have in the city of St. Louis, and most districts have. Parents as Teachers program when children are born. We send persons out to their homes early on, called high-risk families, if you will. That's what the dollars are focused on right now. About $250,000 totally, down from about $800,000 about 3 years ago. But the focus is to go into those homes and help parents understand how to take care of their kids.
And about how many people do you reach through that?
We have 15 persons, all on a full-time basis. They have a caseload of about 30 apiece, so about 500 to 600 families that they reach out to. Families do have the option to say no, and so we get the information from libraries, from the hospitals, and then we use that information and go out and knock on doors and try to engage them in doing things for their kids from 0, if you will, to 3 years old and 4 years old. Once they become early childhood kids, meaning at 3 and 4 year olds in our schools, then we continue to provide that support.
Did you say something about the teacher home visit program?
And right now we have a teacher home visit program that we work with right now. So we have 5 schools, 4 schools, 3 schools, 1 came off the table, that teachers are actually going into homes from grades, well really all grades, to 3 elementary schools where they're actually going into the home and engaging families 2 or 3 times a year to try to help them understand what they need to know around academics to support their children. That has been received really well from the families and from the teachers as well. We pay them an extra service rate to do that because it's outside of their workday, and that program is working really, really well right now.
It's been suggested that those non-teachers are not providing much value, but they're sucking up dollars. Could they be redirected toward teaching the parents? To teach the parents if the education of the parents has so much to do with the success of the child, can we redirect those people or that money toward early childhood education, evening classes, or something like that?
Well, as an academic economist, I'd say yes. But of course, now you can answer in realistically things are in silos. Of course you can, but
and so we have 135 security personnel that are in that number that we need to have, and so we have 400 ICAs, persons who are paraeducators who have to work with kids based on an IEP, because the IEP indicates that they must have a child-specific aid. And so some of those can, but some can't, based upon the demographics of the district and what we need to support our schools. Social workers, in that number is social workers. We have 35 social workers that are not required by state law, but we have to have social workers to work with our families. And so when you start breaking it down piece by piece, it has an effect. And so some of it yes, some of it no. Some are needed to get the basic, get a basic education for kids that we support and need. And my people will go crazy if they didn't have social workers in high poverty schools, because they actually knock on doors and get kids to courts who are absent and that kind of stuff. So you have to look at it, as he said, you have to break it down and look at it. Some can and some can't.
We have time for one more question.
You pick.
Right here.
Right here.
Okay.
Getting back to the charter school issue, who makes the decision to close the schools? And I had some problems with the mayor's office on a charter school. Why is the mayor's office getting involved in this thing, and do they add value?
Let me take the first part, and then you deal with the mayor question. You know, the charter sponsors are the higher ed institutions. They can make a decision to not renew a charter. And they could make it, you know, I mean, it might be a 5-year charter, and in principle, they could shut them down very quickly, and certainly not renew the charters. What I don't understand, and Dr. Adams and some of the lawyers might be able to answer this, apparently they feel themselves vulnerable to lawsuits, and if they try to shut them down. And that's a bad thing, and I don't know what we need legally for the fix. If you know, Earl. So, but that's what we've seen. When some sponsors shut down some of these schools, even Imagine now is Missouri Baptist hasn't officially shut them down, right? So it's not happening, and I'm not sure what we need to change in terms of the legislation and so on to fix this. Some others might can more knowledgeably comment there.
Real quick, from my perspective, I guess the second piece, you know, and I've had this conversation with the mayor's office collectively. You know, the mayor's focused around making sure that there are high quality options for kids in the city of St. Louis, and so his focus has been really making sure that whether it's public schools or charter schools, that the conversation is a conversation around high quality options. And so I think the mayor's gotten involved because he wants to see those options available to families. If you look at the charter schools in the city of St. Louis, only the city of St. Louis, using the same criteria that I have to follow, there would not be one charter school that would meet accreditation. Not one single school. So the mayor's office is focused around trying to make sure through his process of reviewing charter applications, because he found that, to your point, that the state necessarily had one person managing this. So if schools were going to be in the city of St. Louis, he wanted to make sure those schools had high quality sponsors, high quality boards, before a recommendation was made to the state for a charter to be put in place.
But isn't that kind of unusual in the total overall system nationally, that the mayor's office gets involved? I think they just interfere.
Well, let me come back to, but they don't sponsor any schools.
They just,
no, but they
have a review process.
Charter schools, when they apply, are given the impression that in order for them to have an approval, they have to pass muster at the mayor's office. And I went through a situation like that, which was pretty bad.
But that's not required. That is the case, but it's not required. It's not required that somebody has to go through that avenue, but they do, because it gives them greater credibility to the state and greater credibility to sponsors.
Let me just add one point on this. And I don't mean to step on Ed School toes, but my sense is that these decisions are sitting in schools of education in these higher ed institutions, and generally with people who are not particularly data oriented. And so they tend not to, we're laughing here, maybe am I overstating that? And so they're not looking at the data the way we are here. And so they may visit the school and the school feels good and whatever, but they're not looking at the growth data the way we are here. And so, so the schools are continuing, right? And they're not being shut down.
Dr. Adams, Dr. Podgursky, thank you for coming.